The Consumer Outlook Index conducted by ZyFin for the month of October indicates sentiment is in fact at an all-time low. It's contracted a further 0.1% since September. This index measures consumer sentiment by surveying about 4,000 consumers across 18 cities. Remember, we get this for you every month in association with ZyFin. Debopam Chaudhri, Vice President at ZyFin Research, now joins us. Deb, thank you for joining in. Quick disclaimer before I start this conversation, Bloomberg does not endorse this index. We are only trying to understand what's going on in the economy from an academic standpoint. Deb, what does this signify? You've been saying that there are absolutely no evidence of the consumer sentiment improving at all. This is just a reiteration of that trend, isn't it?
That's right. So we have been doing these surveys in the last 2 years. For the first 3 months of this year, there were signals that things are picking up. Consumers might start contributing to demand in the near future. But ever since then, since April of this year, everything has collapsed. So there has been rising discomfort towards borrowing. Their consumers are frequently revising their budget upwards to accommodate basic standard of living. And with inflation and employment, they are also very pessimistic.
I'd like to understand two things. One is the issue of inflation that the Reserve Bank of India keeps talking about. Look, retail prices are high, consumer prices are high, wholesale price indexes are all at uncomfortable levels. That's number one. The second is jobs. I mean, you're actually seeing job losses taking place. Are these factors really weighing in on sentiment right now?
Oh, definitely. Very significant weightage are, these factors are weighing in very significantly because employment sentiment in the history of COI at least has been over the optimism level. So any level which is more than 50 in our index suggests consumers are optimistic. Any level less than 50 means consumers are pessimistic.
Sure.
Employment for the past 3 months has been in the pessimistic zone, and this is happening for the first time in the country ever since we launched our index. Because otherwise, especially in the smaller cities, consumers are kind of optimistic about employment. In India, that's a trend, unlike in the US or wherever.
Sure. I know that you survey over 4,000 consumers across 18 cities. Do you find the trend in the smaller tier 2 towns different from what you find in the urban pockets?
That's interesting. So we do the surveys in metros, tier 1s and tier 2. So in the larger metros and tier 1s, the trend is really bad. So consumer spending is down, consumer employment sentiment is down, and inflation sentiment is definitely down. However, in the tier 2 cities, consumers have a lesser pessimistic levels compared to the counterparts in the larger cities. This can be because of an expectations around the expanding agrarian economy with good monsoons and a properly regulated crop season and all that.
Sure. This is ironical that you talk about consumer sentiment being low, or rather sentiment broadly being low. They want a day when the markets are skyrocketing, right? But what's the road ahead? I know this is a survey that's done in advance, but is it likely to sustain at these levels? Is the environment conducive enough for a change?
This reflects the fact that disconnect between markets and the real economy in reality. So it's strange that the banking...
There's a disconnect, you're saying?
There's a disconnect. It's strange that today's rally is primarily because of the banking stocks when consumers are growing more and more uncomfortable towards borrowing.
Sure.
So is the manufacturing sector.
Sure.
So where is this optimism coming from is really surprising. So we don't think the rally would be sustainable because we don't see any uptick in consumer demand at least in the next 6 to 12 months.